Good. So, welcome to this session about gamification and serious games. My name is Cesco Reale. I work in U4IoT for Archimède Solutions, and in Archimède I'm developing a serious game about privacy. And we are going to see it later, and we are going to play together. In my background, my activities, I deal mainly with three fields that are languages, games, and mathematics. Today we're going to talk about games and communication of serious concepts in general. So we're going to introduce some general concepts of gamification. We're going to see some examples, and then we're going to play. So, interrupt me as soon as you have questions. So this is the summary. Theory of serious games and gamification. Examples of gamification in science. Not only in science, actually. We will see. And privacy game. So first of all, I would like to ask you, what is a game?
Simulation of some strategy you're doing for some reason?
Simulation of a strategy. The strategy is in the game. You're not going to simulate a strategy. But simulation is a good term. Simulation of reality. Some more proposals, suggestions?
It's interaction with a framework of rules.
Interaction within a framework with rules. I like the word rules, because rules is what characterize games. Most games actually cannot exist without rules. So let's see some of there are many different definitions of game, but I'm going to propose you two of them. The first one is a US philosopher, Bernard Suits, that say playing games is a voluntary effort to overcome unnecessary obstacles. It's a philosophical definition, I would say, but I think it takes the essence of what a game is. So we're going to simulate, as Tom said, in a context with some rules, creating obstacles that we actually wouldn't have in order to have fun often or with some serious goals sometimes. And then I'll present the definition of Roger Caillois, French sociologue, that gives a series of adjectives for what a game is. Each of them is not always necessary, but it's present in most games, let's say. So normally a game is free, in the sense that it's a voluntary activity. It's separate, so it's circumscribed in space and time. Typically, not always. The games have a circumscribed space that is defined as the space of the game, and a circumscribed time. Not always, because, for example, we have the pervasive games. It's a new area of games in which we are always playing, and whatever call we receive could be part of the game. And so each of these definitions has exceptions, but most of the times they are true. Uncertain, the outcome is unknown. Unproductive, games do not affect reality, create no goods. Of course, for example, an exception would be some exceptions, or one exception that you can...
I think some can be productive.
For example?
Coordination and training, like doctors.
Yes, or poker.
Yeah.
For example, do affect reality. Governed by rules, and this, by the way, is what differentiates a game from a toy. Okay, toy is play typically without rules, or it's an object typically. if you invent some rules, then the toy can become a game. And then make believe. Players are aware that it's not real life, but an alternative reality. Now, what is a serious game? A serious game is a game designed for a specific purpose that is not the pure entertainment, but it can be education, it can be user engagement, it can be many other things. Here I present a classification of serious games. I'm not going deeply into it, but you can have games for health, for advertising, for training, science and research, for production, for work, etc. And now, what is gamification? What do you think? Which is the difference between gamification and serious games? Any ideas, proposals?
So what was the question?
What is gamification? For what you know.
It's game theory put into something else.
Some
Some sort of game theory put into something which isn't a game, but they're trying to use the same benefits in something else, which isn't.
Exactly. Yeah, more or less is this. So it is the, I use the definition of Scott Nicholson, that is an expert of gamification. He says gamification is the application of gameful or playful layers to motivate engagement in a specific context, and so typically with specific aims. So the difference between gamification and serious games is that gamification uses parts of games, like mechanics, materials, objectives, in a non-game context. And we can deeply go in the difference between structural gamification and content gamification. Structural gamification is a gamification of, for example, that uses the structure of what is typical in games. For example, a quiz, a score, you have levels. When you have your fidelity cards, you have bonuses, points, etc. A ranking, and so on. The content gamification is when you adapt your content in a way that is playful. So, for example, you adapt your content into stories, role games, challenges. I provide an example. For example, in primary school, instead of saying 2x plus 3 equals 5, and then you solve the equation, you say, okay, your mother goes to the market and buys one egg. Then she forgot that she needed one more egg, then, et cetera, et cetera. So you create your content gamification, your story, that's easier to understand and also more playful. Okay, and then the student has to translate it into an equation and then solve the equation. This is much more effective. Here, this is octalysis. This is in gamification theory, an approach proposed by U4IoT Co, another expert that created several serious games, and that proposes the 8 core drives of gamifications, namely meaning, empowerment, social influence, unpredictability, avoidance, scarcity, ownership, and accomplishment. I'll give you some examples. Accomplishment: when you get your goal, you receive, for example, an email with a lot of fun and oh, congratulations, you got this thing, and maybe an audio or a video and something, etc. Or avoidance. An example that he does is an application in which you want to do sport, you want to run. And then your motivation to run is this application that tells you with augmented reality that you have zombies behind you, and so you have to run because you want to avoid zombies, and so on. So there are some core drives of gamification. And now I'll present to you some examples with some videos. This is an anti-phishing game. So, is a game conceived to educate about phishing. Is it possible to have, Chris, is it possible to have?
I think you can mute it
Oh,
for
the
now.
speakers on that computer are terrible.
Okay.
What I can say,
You can mute it from here.
I can?
Yeah.
go back.
You had it there.
Sorry?
Yeah, there. Just mute it there.
Ah, well, okay. Okay, so in this game, you have the fish that is the father that teaches the little son that has to, so each little fish is an internet site, and you have to learn to recognize when the site is a good site, you get bonuses, you get points, and then here, for example, this is a phishing, and so you get hooks. So, next example, this is gamification for human resources. This was developed by a consulting firm that created a framework in which, as a human resources department, you can set your goals, divide your tasks, and then you can visualize different areas and different tasks and the progression in the year, for example, or in the month, and who is doing what, and also with points. And so this is also a gamification for firms, for companies. Another very good example is O-Power. This is end-user engagement for energy saving. And I'll get back to U4IoT 10.11. Okay.
Basically, what you do is based on what other people think you're saying. And my favorite example here is O-Power. O-Power is a utility SaaS company that tries to get people to lower their utility bills.
Can you hear?
And they saw that the best way to treat people's information is to show them how their neighbors use it. Show them their utility, how much you're using, your best
So-
neighbor, and your average neighbor. And everyone who always considers someone a little above average when possible to have everyone above average.
No, the audio is not good enough, so I'll mute it. So basically, the idea is this state in US wanted to educate people not to use too much energy, like in the home, for example, and so they created a platform in which you could apply and then measure how much energy you are consuming, and then have a comparison with your neighbors, for example, with your friends in the same city, so that you come into a positive competition in order to reduce your energy consumption. And then these are some other best examples of gamification. Okay, number 8. I'm not able to. Yeah, this one. The Bottle Bank Arcade. So in order to encourage people to differentiate, you get points like in an arcade. And of course, each of these examples have studies and publications with the results. Now I'm not going to spend time on it. Sorry?
Where is it?
Oh, I don't know. I can tell you later. I have this data, but yeah. This is also was a liquid against infections, against a pandemic of I don't know which flu, and here also you receive, like in an arcade, you receive points. And this is just audio. Is a bin. You understand the point? Oh, this is clearly not a serious game. This is gamification.
What's the difference between something novel like this and actual gamification where you're making something numeric and rational and just something gimmicky?
I don't understand the question.
This is just, does this equate to any sort of quantitative number by putting something in the bin, or is it just a noise that's humorous?
No, this was only the noise. Yeah.
Is that gamification?
This is gamification, yes. I mean, to make playful, something playful. So, yeah, there are no rules, but apply something fun to, yes. To encourage people to take stairs instead of the automatic. Have you seen it?
I think I've seen this, yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, not in real life.
So it's a piano, stairs. %66 more, so also an interesting result. Oh, and this is my favorite one, and that, by the way, won an award.
Your picture will also get that. You'll be entered into the lottery and win some of that money from those theaters.
I'll explain it. So it's a lottery, and if you thanks. If you in this lottery, this was in Sweden, the previous one. If you overcome the speed limit, you get fined. But if you are under the speed limit, you get a lottery ticket that allows you to win the money that pay the people that get fined. Okay, this is just genial. And there was a 22% improvement on the speed average. And for example, I was in Taiwan, and in Taiwan, they have a similar concept with receipts. When you take the receipt in your shop, for example, every receipt has a number that is a lottery, and every week, I think, they have this lottery, and so you are encouraged to ask for the receipt in order to have this possibility to win in this lottery. Last example. This is, oh, sorry. Okay. You have to wait. You wait for your opponent, and waiting, you can play against your opponent. Of course, this is only one against one, so it doesn't solve the problem of if you have a mass of people that wants to cross, but okay. So these were some examples. Then, game, yes?
Do you have any idea of what happens in the long term after the campaign ends? Because, for example, for sure more people recycle glass on that.
Yes.
Especially more people walk in the stairs, on the piano stairs or no edge. But in the long term, after this gamification campaign ends, do you have any idea of the...
It depends a lot on the example, because there are some examples that remain there and then can be still used, and others that clearly that serve only to show that this, if the government or the city decides to take this measure, there will be an effect. Because
the numbers that you were showing in the videos were just during the campaign, for example. Yeah, the increase in the amount of people using the stairs were just
yes,
and that the piano stairs were there, right?
Yes, because of course you have maintenance costs.
Time after that, people will probably start using the electric stairs again.
Okay, yeah, good question. I understand. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't have this data. I haven't found it. I have found data about the period of the trial, but no, I don't have this data, unfortunately. So, game design, modeled by Catherine Mercury, game teacher. Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. I think there are many similarities with what we have seen previously in several contexts. Now I'll show you some last examples and that we will play. These are some examples that I have used personally, mainly in science festivals. For example, Werewolves for Psychology is a role-playing game that was invented as a serious game. Then people actually played without knowing it. But we had a psychologist that observed the group dynamics, and then there are hidden roles, and you play, and then the psychologists take notes, and then at the end, before there is an introduction about verbal and non-verbal communication, etc., and then after that, there is an analysis. Serious game for chemistry. Here you have a very big board with balls that represent atoms, and you have cards, and you have questions, and then you have molecules, and you have to build on the board with your atoms. You have to build some molecules that you received, and this is the objective of the game. Gamification for cryptography. I created a couple of years ago an exhibition about privacy and cryptography in the European project Privacy Flag, and I had a part about games, and one of them was a very interesting game. I mean, I think you know it. Is just an encrypted message. This was used by the way, by Edgar Allan Poe. Is an example from the literature, and the message that we wanted to convey is the following: that in order to a basic strategy in order to decode an encrypted message, at least a basically encrypted message that use just substitutions for every letter and one symbol. You can provide an analysis of the statistical analysis of the language. For example, in English, the letter E has averagely this frequency, and then the letter T, A, etc., etc. Then you provide your analysis for your message, and then you try to match, and of course it doesn't work perfectly, but you have a good starting point. Okay? So this is a mathematical concept that we conveyed through a game that we used as a serious game. This is a 4D tic-tac-toe, and this is to play in the fourth spatial dimension. I'm not going into details now, but the idea was to create a game in which you can understand the concept of the fourth spatial dimension through a game, an easy game, and even children understood and played. Fractals, this is another example. You take a line, you divide it by 3, you take out the central part, and then you repeat the same. Okay, you have this line, you take out the central third, etc. And you repeat, and you repeat, and you repeat, then this is actually, you can even not notice a difference, but you can go on up to infinity, and you create something that is called a fractal in geometry. And then we invented the fractal tic-tac-toe. So you can play in the holes, and then when a level is complete, so as soon as you have 3 in a row, you get a point, okay? And then when the level is complete, if someone is winning, the game is over. If there is equality, then you open the following level and you go on. So you understand the concept just playing. Rhythmomachia is a chess with numbers invented in Middle Ages. This was probably one of the first examples of serious games because it was invented in order to train about mathematics. Or for probability, I used backgammon in order to introduce some basic concept of probability, because when you want to understand how to, for example, between 2 possible moves, which is the best one, you can use it in order to introduce some basic concepts of probability. Okay, now privacy game. So privacy game objectives are, so I go back to U4IoT, to educate the LSP stakeholders on data protection, to raise awareness on the main risks related to data protection with the IoT deployments, mainly in the LSPs, the large-scale pilots, to translate complex legal norms into clear and easily understandable principles, and to reduce the risks of non-compliance. Our methodology was, we have analyzed the GDPR that is going, the General Data Protection Regulation that is going into force in 2 days. We did an analysis of the large-scale pilots that will need to comply with GDPR. Then we started with game design, test and validation, analysis of the results, following step, and then again, so improvements, and then this was the cycle that we adopted, and then we will have dissemination that we already started actually. Okay, so requirement. I'll go directly to play the game so that we can understand just playing. These were some pictures from the tests that we had in IoT Week Geneva, in another meeting in Geneva in March. This was in Ludesco Game Festival in Switzerland. And okay, and just to conclude, now we are developing another game. I will show you maybe later. We will not have the time to play it, but the idea of this second game is that we have cards, we have roles, like, for example, smart city user, or smart event user, etc. You have hidden roles. Or you can be a company that is interested in collecting some data, for example, religion data or age data, whatever. And then we have some cards that represent the users, and some cards that represent the data. Like, for example, let's take religion, Taoist, or interest, cuisine, etc., etc. And so you have some data, and then we have a grid on the table with this data, and then you move your marker, and this is actually internet. So going through the internet, you reveal inevitably some data of you or other users, and then if you are a user, your objective is to collect your own data. So in a certain sense, erase them from the internet to make them private. And if you are a company, your objective is to collect some category of data. For example, religion, for example, interests or job or others. So, okay, so now, privacy questions. So how many are we? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 people?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Although Katharina just.
Yeah. Okay.
Is.
Okay. So I propose to split in 2 teams. Maybe around 1 table, I would say. If yes. So maybe just take 1 table, and 1 team is on one side and 1 team on the other side.